Because if you're too conservative, you may not be on track for your goals. And if you're too aggressive, sometimes you don't need to be that aggressive. It puts you more at risk when you don't have to be. Because the more risk you take, the more return you can get. But as you're getting closer to retirement or in retirement, typically the less risk that you want to take.
Hello, this is Mark Silverman, managing member and founder of Silverman & Associates, and I'm also a certified financial planner professional. I want to welcome you to the Saving with Silverman podcast. I'm glad you're here. Each week, we'll discuss different financial planning topics because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Let's talk about common mistakes that people make, Mark. Talk about some of the common mistakes that we see being made from time to time, again, by retirees and pre-retirees alike. First of all, a lot of people out there listening to this probably think that bonds are a totally safe investment. They've considered that for a very long time. Why is that, and what's your response to it?
Well, it's all relative. Bonds are certainly safer than stocks. The more risk, more returns. So bonds typically you don't earn as much as you would in a stock over time. But bonds can be safe or they can be more risky. It depends on the type of bond. Are we talking, a U.S. government bond? Are we talking a corporate bond? Are we talking, what's known as a junk bond or high yield bond? Those all have different characteristics. The higher the yield on a bond, typically the riskier the bond. And when you buy a bond, if you buy an individual bond, you buy it, and then at maturity, you get your money back. However, if you sell it before maturity, you can get more, you can get less, depending on what interest rates are, depending on the time that you bought that bond. And, if you're buying bonds in a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, et cetera, you're going to see those fluctuate based on what interest rates are at. So those, you might get more, you might get less depending on those. Just because you have a bond doesn't mean you can't lose. And I think that's an important thing that most people don't understand. But you need to understand that bonds can't, some are risky and some are safer. But again, some bonds doesn't mean that your principal is always protected.
This is a major mistake that a lot of people make, and that is not protecting yourself against long-term care needs, because that can really wreck everything in your life. That's a real financial nightmare. We know how important medical care is, but long-term care needs can really wipe you out, and you need to be prepared.
Right. And as you know, Medicare doesn't cover those costs. So it's important to understand, and this is part of the financial planning process that we go through, is helping people understand what that might cost. I say it's more important if you're married to have this happen. If you're single, I could make the argument that if, the state were to take over and take all your money, who are you really harming? You don't have another spouse to protect, maybe unless you want to preserve your assets for your children or et cetera. But if you're married, it's very important because you want to make sure that the other person isn't devastated if you need care or if you need a long-term care need. And, there are options out there. There's more options out there now than there used to be. So I think it's important to at least understand those, and then you can make a decision, an informed decision based on what you know, whether it's self-insuring, whether it's buying a traditional long-term care policy, or my preference, looking at some type of hybrid life insurance that offers long-term care benefits. So understanding what those are, what the pros and cons of each are, and then you can make it, like I said, an informed decision on what's the best course of action to take.
You're listening to Saving with Silverman with Mark Silverman of Silverman & Associates, and we're talking about common mistakes that people make. And we've talked about considering bonds to be a safe investment. Sometimes that's a mistake. Not protecting yourself against long-term care needs is a really big one. But another one here is not guarding against market decline. We know it's going to happen at some point, and you need to be prepared.
And I think it's being proactive and understanding and making sure that you're taking the right risk at all times. Unfortunately, we don't know when the markets are going to go up and when the markets are going to go down. There's no way of timing it. So with that being said, it's important that if you do the work up front as far as understanding your risk, which again is two components, one being how much risk are you willing to take? And two, is that risk that you're taking going to keep you on track for your financial goals? Because if you're too conservative, you may not be on track for your goals. And if you're too aggressive, sometimes you don't need to be that aggressive. It puts you more at risk when you don't have to be. Because the more risk you take, the more return you can get. But as you're getting closer to retirement or in retirement, typically the less risk that you want to take. So it's important to understanding that and doing the work up front, making sure that the risk is adjusted appropriately and also adjusted as time goes on, not just static saying we put you in this and then we just sit there forever. We're adjusting that risk based on your goals and your situation changing, whether that's increasing the risk or reducing the risk. Having those conversations and understanding that is important. So trying to take more risk when the market's up and less when the market's down is impossible. You might as well pick lottery numbers if you think that's possible.
Mark Silverman can equip you with a number of tools in your financial planning. And if you're assuming that one particular financial tool is always good or always bad, well, stop and think about that. Talk to Mark Silverman about it.
Yeah, and there's lots of different strategies out there. They've all got to make sense to you. Not one thing fits everything. If somebody sells you, and I'm not trying to pick on the annuity salespeople, but this tends to be where I see it, where they say this is the greatest product. If the markets go up, you make money. If the markets go down, you don't lose anything. Well, it doesn't exactly work like that. There's lots of restrictions. I know there's people out there touting this, and if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I just want to make sure that you understand that if you put too many eggs in one basket, that can potentially be a problem. So you want to make sure you have the right mix of investments, and somebody that's creating a well-diversified portfolio that makes sense to your goals, your objectives, your risk tolerance, et cetera, that you're not locked into. If you need to change it, you can. So it's understanding those sorts of things and putting all of your eggs, again, in one basket that you can't change, that's permanent. Again, this probably sounds like an annuity, and that's typically where I see too many people put too much of their money, can potentially be a problem down the road.
Well, this may be the most common mistake of all for a lot of people out there in Tucson who may be listening to this conversation right now, and that is not having a plan. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
That's absolutely true. So we're a planning-based firm first. I'm a certified financial planner professional, so I'm licensed to do financial plans, whereas a lot of people call themselves financial planners, and then that term's used quite loosely. And unfortunately, a lot of these people aren't qualified to do financial planning. And really, every client that we have has a financial plan with us. That's how we start each relationship, because as a fiduciary, which I'm required to be, I can't do my job unless I know everything about you. If you're just giving me a portion of your money and just say, I just want help with this, that's not something I can help with you. I need to know everything about your income taxes, what's your goals, what's your objectives, what's your estate plan look like, what's your investments, your risk. There's so many different factors that everything relates to each other. If somebody's giving a decision on one thing, that can impact another thing. And so understanding those things can only be the only way that we can give you the best advice that's in your best interest, is by knowing everything that we can possibly know about you and putting the time in to do that. And so financial planning is really the crux. And if you don't have a financial plan, you really are running blind. And if people are just doing investment management for you, they're really doing you a disservice. And unfortunately, most people in this business still have the stockbroker mentality, even though they call themselves financial advisors. They're really just financial salespeople.
Well, there are lots of folks out there who could benefit from just a phone conversation with you. And I'm going to give them the number in just a moment here. But what happens when they call in to get that 15 to 20 minute introductory phone call?
You'll get on my calendar so we can schedule some time to talk about things. We will learn about your situation. You'll be able to ask me about my firm and my practice, and I'll tell you about our philosophy. And if it's a right fit, we'll move on and schedule what we call a get acquainted meeting here in the office and go from there. And we do things, we have a definite process that we follow so we don't miss anything. We want all of our clients to have the same level of service experience. And so we really are trying to do the best that's possible. And so we follow a strict process where we try to accomplish everything that there is to accomplish regarding your financial plan so nothing gets missed.
You've been listening to the Saving with Silverman podcast. If you have any questions at all about your financial situation, please give Mark Silverman a call. Again, his number is 520-333-7601, or go online to savingwithsilverman.com. For Mark Silverman, I'm Ron Stutz. We'll see you next time on the Saving with Silverman podcast.
The Saving with Silverman podcast is brought to you by Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, based in Tucson, Arizona. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show on your favorite app today and never miss an episode. Just search for Saving with Silverman to find us, or visit savingwithsilverman.com to listen to past episodes, to contact Mark, and to learn more about how to make smarter decisions with your money. All matters discussed on this show are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed are solely those of Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC and staff. All topics covered are believed to be from reliable sources. However, Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC makes no representation as to its accuracy or completeness. This show shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or investment advisory services to residents of any state other than Arizona or where otherwise permitted. Topics should be discussed with your individual advisor prior to implementation. Fee-based financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Silverman & Associates Wealth Management LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Arizona. Insurance products and services are offered through Silverman & Associates, an affiliated company.